The opening scene shows 3D animations set against a park background. Scene A. Elderly man, A, sitting on a chair, takes a banana from a bag filled with fruits and vegetables at his feet and feeds Monkey A in front of him. After receiving the banana, Monkey A sits down and begins to eat. Monkey B, to the right of elderly man A, runs towards the bottom right corner of the camera. Scene B cuts in from the left, sharing the screen with Scene A. Scene B shows Lady A is sitting on a bench in a sitting-out area beside a pavement in an urban environment, with over 20 feral pigeons on the ground nearby. A banner about stopping the feeding feral pigeons hangs in the background. Lady A takes bird feed from a bag beside her and scatters it on the ground to feed many feral pigeons. As the camera pans to the right in Scene A, we see Lady B and her 2 children happily enjoying sandwiches on a bench. Monkey B, having run away from elderly man A, jumps in front of the boy, snatches the sandwich from his hands, and sits down to eat. The 3 people are terrified. The girl gets scared and stands up, while Lady B also rises to protect the girl with her hands, stepping back away from Monkey B. Meanwhile, elderly man A continues to throw an apple onto the ground. The 2 scenes shift upwards, revealing 3 new scenes below, and thus the screen divides into 5 frames. In the lower left frame, Scene C, elderly man B is kneeling on the ground in a corner of a housing estate, scattering bird feed from a bag in his left hand to feed a flock of feral pigeons in front of him. Lady C is resting on a nearby bench. A feral pigeon flies over, leaving droppings on her left shoulder. In the lower middle frame, Scene D, a taxi stops in the road, with 2 monkeys walking in front of it. In the lower right frame, Scene E, 5 wild pigs are seen in an open area of a housing estate. An enforcement officer says,
"Feeding wild animals or feral pigeons causes them to gather in urban areas."
The camera slightly zooms in, and the scenes on the upper left and lower right are removed, leaving only 3 frames. In the upper frame, Scene A, the mother and children have walked away from elderly man A. The boy is rubbing his eyes and crying at the camera. Lady B is holding the girl and patting her left shoulder gently to comfort her. In the lower left frame, Scene C, upon seeing the bird droppings, Lady C looks very disgusted and tries to wipe the droppings off her left shoulder with her right hand. In the lower right frame, Scene D, another monkey appears from the right side of the camera, crossing the road with the other 2 monkeys in front of the taxi. The enforcement officer says,
"Creating nuisances and hygiene problems."
A new scene cuts in from the right side of the upper panel, and the screen changes to 4 frames. The new scene, Scene F, shows Lady D is holding a bag full of goods and food on the pavement. A wild pig is also holding the bag in its mouth, tugging it away from Lady D. In the upper left frame, Scene A, a hand is seen patting the boy's head to comfort him. The enforcement officer says,
"And affecting their health and behavior."
All scenes shift upward, with a blurred background of the hills in the Western District from Victoria Harbour. On the left side of the screen, a female enforcement officer in a neat uniform appears. Her cap has an emblem with AFCD, Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department, embroidered on its middle front part, and the same letters are on the right side of the cap and the left chest of her uniform. On the right side is an open book with Wild Animals Protection Ordinance written on it. The enforcement officer says,
"Under the Wild Animals Protection Ordinance."
The camera moves to reveal 2 frames. In the left frame, Scene G, Lady E kneels on the grass near a slope beside the pavement, tossing 2 apples to 2 monkeys at the bottom of the slope. The monkeys then sit down to eat the apples. In the right frame, Scene E, a man approaches the open space in the housing estate, dumps 2 bags of food, and a pile of bread and vegetables appears on the ground. The previous scenes then shift up, and the screen changes to 3 frames. The upper right frame, scene E, shows a wild pig slowly approaches the food. The lower frame, scene C, features a close-up of elderly man B feeding the pigeons. The enforcement officer says,
Illegal feeding of wild animals or feral pigeons.
The lower frame, scene C, gradually blurs into the background, and the screen displays $5,000 fixed penalty. The enforcement officer says,
May result in a fixed penalty of $5,000.
A scene cuts in from the lower right, forming a 4-frame layout. The lower right frame has a gray background displaying or prosecution. The enforcement officer says,
Or prosecution.
All scenes shift to the right, returning to the enforcement officer's scene. On the right side, a text box displays the following words in 3 lines: maximum penalty, $100,000 fine, and imprisonment for 1 year. The upper right corner of the text box has a feeding ban sign. The enforcement officer says,
The maximum penalty is a $100,000 fine.
Gray prison bars fall within the text box. The enforcement officer says,
And 1 year imprisonment upon conviction.
The scene changes, and at the top of the screen, the All for No Feeding logo appears, with some high-rise buildings in Hong Kong in the background. A crowd of over 20 people of various ages and dressing styles are standing in front of the buildings. Some people are holding or raising the feeding ban signs. On the steps in front of the crowd, there are a wild pig, 2 monkeys, and 3 feral pigeons. The crowd shouts in unison,
We are all for no feeding.
The wild pig slowly walks into the bushes, the monkeys jump out of the frame, and the pigeons fly off to the sides. Finally, the scene changes to a white background displaying the AFCD logo.